Mutant Ninja Turtles in this house? Be a little louder for me, come on. He's not only the co-creator of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but in my opinion, one of the most important comic book creators of all time, who loves this industry more than anybody, the man, the myth, the legend, the great Kevin Eastman. There he is, come on.
Thanks. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Sitting here or over there?
You sit here, you grab your mic, it's all good. You got the Leonardo mic.
Yes, Leonardo. Hey guys, how are you?
Good.
It's been 3 years since we were here last time. Wonderful to be back, and I get the same love times two from all of you. So it's great to be back again in Huntsville, and so thanks.
Thank you for coming back.
10th anniversary.
This is the 10th anniversary.
Thanks to all you guys. Come out here and support everybody and stand in those lines, and we appreciate you. So, cheers.
Well, thank you for coming back. We really appreciate it. We did the panel together last time we were here, and it was one of the greatest moments of my life. So thank you for that. Like, it was absolutely great. We had a great conversation. I made a great joke about Vanilla Ice, who's been the villain in Ninja Turtles Part 2, and you laughed. So that was great.
And that's, I like that idea.
So I want to kick off with Last Ronin 2, Re-Evolution is about to be wrapping up, I think, on Wednesday, right? You excited? What is there going to be surprising? What can we expect?
Yes, it is. It was really exciting when we did Last Ronin 1. There really wasn't a plan for a sequel. Tom and I had this idea of what we wanted to do, that final scene in Series 1, where the new Turtles, April and Jason Marie Jones in the lab, and it was sort of just leaving the door open and cracked in case you guys liked it enough, that we'd go back and visit the Roninverse, because Tom and I spent about a year and a half working with the whole team, the Escorza brothers, Ben Bishop, and Luis Antonio Delgado, who's the colors. It was just a wonderful experience. We fell in love with the Roninverse. We look around every corner of every building on certain panels and go, man, that's a great story to tell over there. That's a great story to tell over there. So because of your love and support of the series, so well that we got to go back in the Roninverse and do Re-Evolution, which is Part 2, as we mentioned. And then even as we started designing what we want to do with Re-Evolution, we stated there will be a Part 3. I'll let you know right now. We're going to work with you guys. Killed it. The sales were great on Part 2, so we had an idea for Part 3. To us, it's kind of like Last Ronin 1 being like maybe the equivalent of Star Wars: A New Hope, and then Part 2, Re-Evolution, is kind of like Empire Strikes Back, and so we had a very significant idea for the Return of the Jedi, if you will, in Part 3. So that's kind of where we're heading with it, and again, thanks again for your support. So yeah, issue 5 drops. There's a few, I don't want to give any spoilers, but it's a pretty intense issue, kind of like what we did in issue 1. But it was in a really exciting series, and it's great that we got to work with the same guys, the Escorza brothers, Ben Bishop, and Tom and I. Of course, we just have a great time doing it.
Well, we're having a great time reading it. I'll tell you that much. And I love the new Turtles. I think they're so fun.
Yes.
So cool. Their personalities, they're different. It's not just a rehash of what happened before. You know, they're completely new characters, and they have their own personalities. I love that. Now, last time you were here, we were talking about duo shape. Right? Because I'm a nut for that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And you said you had some of the last surviving pieces of it, and you were using it. We've seen some of that.
Yep.
Have you saved anything for the future?
We have. Actually, there's a story, Tom and I talking about the Roninverse. We had another idea for a 48-page one-shot that actually kind of took place within Last Ronin #1. So if you remember, we had the series called Last Ronin Lost Years, which was sort of a spin-off, but it also covered a period of time when Michelangelo in Series 1 went to Japan and found out what happened to Splinter and Donatello there. It was a 16-year period that he went on this sort of mind melt, mind quest following, to find his purpose, which brought him to, 16 years later, it brought him to page 1 of issue 1 of Last Ronin. So we've got I've been eyeballing, I've got about 200 sheets of the dual shade left, so this 48-page one-shot, I'm kind of eyeballing it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not, no spoilers yet until we make an announcement on that, but that's, and the dual shade, if you don't know, it's this very interesting technique of rendering, and they used to use a lot of time in, newspapers back in the day, or Mad Magazine, things that are printed in black and white. And it's basically you draw typically how you would an outline and do your actual drawing of whatever you're gonna put on the page. And this dual shade has this pattern of lines printed within the paper, and you use this developer. It's two tones, one clear and one darker. And it helps develop and adds an extra tone of grays to each one. And then when it's printed, it just gives you this wonderful depth that you don't get to see in regular black and white comic books. So it's great. It's old school technique, and I still, this, in the day when everybody's doing drawing on iPads, which I love, and Wacom tablets, and you can do all these amazing things with that. I still do everything completely physical. I get my pencil out and I draw it, and I ink it, and then I scan it, sometimes badly. No, I scan it, and then that's how I print it. But I want to do it old school. So that's what
I appreciate the old school. I really do. It's so much fun. IDW's been killing it with the Turtles. They have been for years, right? They went 150 issues in that series. You were involved in that series.
Absolutely.
They recently relaunched with Jason Aaron, a whole bunch of artists, and recently Juan Guerrero, who I think is right there in the legacy of some of the absolute best turtle artists of all time. His layouts, his compositions, the energy is there. It's so amazing. Do you have any involvement in that series, or you just kind of step back on this one?
Just mostly watching these incredibly talented young people, Sarah, Juan, Dan, there's so many of these people who are half my age, draw better than I do. I just get pissed off most of the time. No, kidding aside, no, I love them because the energy that they have when you think like now Turtles are 41 years old, and Peter and I in the first 25 years working on 300 animated episodes, all the cartoons, all the comic books, the Archie series, the movies. And you get to that point where you think, is there any stone left unturned? Is there another story to tell? And after taking a short break, I went back to work on the Turtles with IDW in 2011. And here comes this whole team of really incredibly gifted young people. Tom Waltz, head writer, we worked together, writing a number of issues together, and then of course last Roman. But these young people that bring such passion and energy to tell a story, and they brought that to the books, and they bring a perspective where you're like, man, I never thought of that. And so it really energizes me that they're excited and I get excited. And so it really makes a great team to tell the best story possible. And that's kind of their mission, and I love it. Really inspiring.
Yeah, it's been such a great book. One of the best sellers too.
Yeah, that's your fault, you guys. No, we appreciate, that's one of the things I tell a lot of fans that come by the table, because I do love when you come by and you wait in that line, and I joke, I wouldn't wait in line to see me. I'm glad you guys do. But I couldn't be sitting where I am without you guys, supporting it, making those comics a success, going out to the, seeing movies like Mutant Mayhem, which I thought was a wonderful movie, and at least we had some recovery of the Michael Bay movies. But that, just what's interesting seeing the Mutant Mayhem. If you haven't seen it, it's worth seeing. I love it because it made me laugh out loud in a lot of ways. And Jeff Rowe was the director, and of course Seth Rogen being involved, and Evan Goldberg. But Jeff grew up as a fan of the Turtles. He showed, the first time we met him, he showed me pictures of him when he was like 4 years old, wearing the Turtles Halloween costumes. Had all the toys, Dad put together the super play set, Christmas Eve, so he was a serious collector and fan, passionate about the Turtles. So he brought this perspective and love of what he wanted to see being a fan to that movie. And I think it just came out in spades, just wonderfully funny, goofy, sometimes with like, you see some of the Seth Rogen influences, like, what? But it was a really good time. So that's the passion that's super fun.
All right. I want to move away from the Turtles for just a moment. Sure. I recently had a conversation with a gentleman named David Avalone.
Yes.
And y'all working together on Drawing Blood.
Yep.
The story behind the stories. I'm a huge fan. I'm loving it. Can you talk to us about that project, where it came from, and convince everybody to buy it because I'm trying to do that in my shop. And like, you need to check this book out. It's so good.
Well, thank you. No, and it's I don't want to say it's a slow burn, but it is kind of a slow burn. And the way the story is, and what it is for years, my experiences in, look, Peter and I were so lucky that the dream came true for us that we got to have success from the first issue to write our comic book for a living. So for us, the dream had come true. We were like, if we did nothing but drawing comic books for the rest of life, there was nothing better in our world. The fact that we then got to experience things like because we own and control all aspects of the Turtles when we developed and worked to develop and had control and say over the cartoon show or the toy line or the movies, all those different licenses. Nothing was seen with the Turtle for the first 20 years that Pete and I didn't directly have involvement in, experience it in, and learn things like Hollywood is a really interesting place. And so it's got a weird set of rules, and you have to learn how to make that business work and continue to keep that control. The same with the toy business. And so we have all these stories of like these just such bizarre experiences of in it. So I started making this notebook. Going to many, many comic conventions over the 40 years. Meet with, different comic book artists, Chris Claremont and Frank Miller. You see these guys, and they're half the time we're hanging out in the hotel bar after the show, either telling Hollywood horror stories, publisher horror stories, fan experiences. So I started this sketchbook guide. I called it On the Shoulders of Giants, and just taking all of their experiences and putting it into a character I had in mind. And not using it as an autobiography, but using my experiences as a foundation, 20%, and then building all those stories into that I first put everybody else into. It was far more interesting than what I did. And so I came up with this idea called Drawing Blood, and I started working with David Avalone, and it's basically a fictional character. So we say it's a completely fictional true story of this guy named Dayton Bookman, which is basically based on me growing up, and I sort of the Shane Goodman characters had a huge amount of success. Did things like Batmobile and Army Tank, I don't know where that came from. And this guy coming down the other side, and he's looking for that spark, that mojo, something to bring the love and his passion for creativity back. And there's gangsters and crazy ex-girlfriends and Hollywood producers, and there's gunfights. It's just,
There's a crazy director telling him that his property is now going to be aliens.
How can you come up with that?
I know, right?
No, and even the crazy director's name is Morgan Barber. Nothing to do with Michael Bay. And so we take so there's a lot of Easter eggs, a lot of sort of inside humor, but there's adventure and the art team is so fantastic. Ben Bishop is the main series artist, and he's one of those guys that draws better than I ever will. He has that ability to create the acting, the subtle moments that bring that stories to life. David and I wrote the story. David does the script. Ben does the final art. I do some of the flashbacks. Another fantastic artist named Troy Little. It's a fun story, and it's I think that we're lucky to have the following, the sales that we have. I feel like once it gets into a trade as a full novel, I think it's going to be easier to get through the whole thing instead of a sequential. We're having a blast doing it. And, if anybody's reading it, thank you for the support.
It's a really good book. I would highly encourage it. I think the first collection is out.
First question, we just, I think issue 8 just landed. It's 12 issues total, so it's issue 8 is coming out now.
Yeah.
So.
It's fantastic. Thank you for doing that, too. It's so much fun.
Thank you. I
You
appreciate
pick up all those little Easter eggs, too. Be like, oh, man, that's awesome. I know that we talked before about your influence, especially Kirby, but I know that you have a big influence with Richard Corbin. Can you just tell us a little bit about that and why it's important?
Absolutely. It's one of those things that in Heavy Metal Magazine, the first issue came out in 1977, and it was a wonderful collection of stories, short, medium, longer, and it was some of the most popular underground artists. These are the guys like Richard Corbin, Von Bodie, people like that. They couldn't, Marvel would never think of hiring them. DC would never think of hiring them. So they really published comics underground. You can only find like record stores, the smoke shops, and things like that for many years. So heavy metal brought them to the front and put them on a newsstand magazine, high quality newsstand magazine, combined with a lot of European artists, which it did to me as my exposure. What I learned from heavy metal magazine is U.S. comics, for thanks to McCarthyism and things like that, they had restrictions to Comics Code Authority that kept the material for 12 years old and younger. And so even though I still love Batman and Daredevil and those kinds of things, they were written for a much younger audience. Kind of like heavy metal and the European comic books, they had no restrictions. They were written for comic fans of all ages. So it was like action, adventure, history, past, present, future. You go into a comic store in Paris and the comics are hardcover books, and you see people of all ages, more adults than kids, and they're buying and enjoying the medium. So that was my exposure to it. So at the time I was kind of growing out of comic books that I loved, was wishing to have something that was written for somebody, the kind of stuff I like to read, older, more intelligent stories, along with heavy metal magazine. That led me to Underground Comics. Publishers, that led me to self-publishing. So when Pete and I came up with the idea with the Turtles, instead of trying to sell it to a bigger company, we self-published it, which means we owned it, we controlled it, we profited from it. And so I used my profits from the Turtles to buy Heavy Metal Magazine and ran it for 22, 23 years. And so it's just a wonderful place to learn about more world perspective on all kinds of comics and different things, not just superhero stuff and things like that. So it was a great platform to do. I love being part of that company for all those years. And it's still out there, kind of. I think they're trying to relaunch kind of.
Yeah, they're about to relaunch something like that, yeah. Doing some Presenta covers, they dug some stuff up, I believe, so.
Yeah.
Very excited about that. Once again, I did this last time. Thank you so much for caring about this industry, for creators. Thank you so much for caring about the fans. Made so many of our lives better. And I mean, from Tundra Publishing, taking chances on creators like Mike Allred, the Words and Pictures Museum. You've done so much for this industry.
Thank you.
Thank you. I won a movie recommendation. I was at I have a buddy in town who runs video store, right? And he was telling me the other day about a movie, and I realized that you got a cameo in Citizens Toxic Avenger #4.
Yeah.
And he says that was the best Toxic Avenger movie outside of the first one. I'm just curious.
And it wasn't because of me, and trust me.
How did that happen?
No, that was, it's, I love independent film. I love film, comics and film. To me, it's like all the short comics that Peter and I did, and all the comics I've done since. We did the layouts and storyboards, so it's a lot of times all script, layouts and story. It's basically simplified director there. So I'm choosing the action moments, the beats, when you do the big scenes, when you do the little scenes, so it's very cinematic, and I always enjoyed independent filmmaking, like guys like Robert Rodriguez, who did El Mariachi, and Quentin Tarantino, with Reservoir Dogs. So you have these independent filmmakers that need to step outside the restrictions of Hollywood and the restraints on them, and let them be fully creative and embrace a fresh idea. And what I discovered, trauma films, I just loved it because there was some really crazy stuff in there. It's like, Trey Parker and Matt Stone's first movie. It was called Cannibal the Musical. Have you ever seen that?
Oh, yes.
They did a live-action movie based on the damn the Donner Party massacre.
Yeah.
And they did this a musical. It was like, wait, what? and so that was what I loved about trauma films, is that they supported independent filmmaking. Wonderfully wacky, creative ideas. James Gunn's first movie was Citizen Talks. It was a Citizen Talks scene? No, Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet. So James Gunn, before he became James Gunn, he said I met him at one of the film markets. We were there to support Lloyd Kaufman, who's one of the main owner and founder of Trauma. And he had just written a book. He says, everything I learned about filmmaking, I learned from Romeo and Juliet. And he said he was paid $150 for the script and the direction. But it's like, that's how you learn. And it's like, you get to be, fully creative. So, so I loved it. Whenever Lloyd, in town would visit, and he would come and be like, hey, can I shoot a couple scenes for this movie you're doing at your house? I'm like, sure, Lloyd, come on in. So like,
Yeah.
Anyway, but I love it. That was really fun, and it's a great, I'd like to see more of that. It's really wonderfully creative people doing the same kind of things that Pete and I were doing, looking for a home in self-publishing,
Yeah.
independent comics.
Because that's awesome. I'm gonna have to rent it and check it out. I'm gonna try to spot you.
I'll dive in advance. Just don't rent. There's a movie called Tales from the Crapper. Just don't rent.
Don't read that one. Okay.
I was in that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna read it now. So one more thing that I found out that was interesting to me was that you were commissioned. You are on the drum kit for System of a Down, amongst with other artists. I mean, Simon Bisley and some Digital. Those are awesome names.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's cool. I mean, you're part of that crew, right? But like, what was that experience like?
Well, it's great. As as a fan of the easy listening band, just move it down. And good elevator music.
Yeah.
No, John, I met John DeMayan, the drummer for System of a Down. Huge comic band, and I would see him every year at San Diego, and he would buy some art and buy some books and some of his comics. And he had this idea, because he was such a fan of so many different comic artists, that he bought a completely clean, raw, unfinished, white drum set, double bass, everything. And so he just got commissioned different artists that he was fans of. Bill Sienkiewicz, and the list is a massive list of people.
Art Adams, I believe.
Art Adams, yeah. And so there was one of the basic drum kits, he gave Simon and Bisley to do one side, and I did the other side of it. I think it's still, I think he used it on a mini tour, but then he put it in, it's on display at his comic store, Torpedo in Vegas. And it's just an amazing tribute to comics. And it's just part of his love and passion for all these comics.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What a trip. What a trip.
Yeah, it was great.
All right. Now I know that the audience y'all have some burning questions, right? Yeah. Anybody have something they want to ask? Right? All right. Right here. We'll start with you.
Hey, so in the 90s, there was this show that you might have heard of, Ninja Turtles Next Mutation.
Yep.
I was curious because they've also done Power Rangers comic books later on. I was wondering at any point in time from that show and the comics, did they ever reach out to you and say, hey, this is what we're doing, what's your opinion? Like any feedback, or do they just license it and go?
Well, the show you mentioned was called The Next Mutation, and it was an interesting time because I worked on that show a lot. I worked with the writer Dan Clark and Lance Rock, all the producers. One of the guys that supported the creation of Venus and Milo, the first female turtle, which fans hated. And growing up as Sarah Connor, Lieutenant Ripley, I'm a huge fan. April O'Neil, huge fan of fun female personalities. But the way it was approached and put out there, I think fans were just sort of, we didn't click just right. But I really enjoyed it. We did 26 episodes, including some Power Rangers crossovers, Turtles Power Rangers crossovers, and that day is the live action feature. I think it's strung together a couple episodes, but they strung together the feature. But I worked really hard on that series. I really love that series. Pete hated that series. He actually was one of those things that he's like, if they do a girl turtle, I'm going to step away for a couple of years. And so he did. So he took a break, sabbatical, and I
If
had a
it
good
did
time.
anything to you as a kid, I liked it.
I liked it too.
After Turbo, when they put the little kid as a Power Ranger, I hated that, but Venus, I liked it.
Okay. It's so funny, and that's what I love about working with Tom Waltz. Because Tom is such a huge turtle fan, and some of his favorite turtle series was we call it the 2000 series, Fox Kids. It was that ran a couple of years and evolved into Fast Forward before that went away. But Tom loves that. We both love all the bits and pieces of all the different turtle universes. So when we were about approaching issue 50, and we kept talking about trying to figure a way to bring a female turtle into the turtle universe. It's sort of a happy accident when Tom came up with this idea for a character named Jenica, and she was in a foot assassin, which then, it was to kill Splinter, and, so to the good side, the dark side, the good side. And the more we evolved her different issues, she became a real big fan favorite. So we started a plan, and this is like issue 55, and it took us to issue 95 to basically, thanks to comic book science, like the She-Hulk creation similar blood transfusion. So we had a plan to bring Jenica Miami stories were carefully choreographed. We put these like, we hope for the best. Everybody's embraced Jenica and being loved now as a female
Good
turtle.
reactions. You had the new color too, right? So we're doing yellow,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's really fun. So I love Jenica.
All right. The Red Ranger.
So my question is, so there have been so many crossovers over the years. Power TMNT, Batman TMNT, especially number 3 with the Mirage Turtles. I know that now they just started to get anime verse, they Naruto now. For you personally, because I know that I've actually talked to you about this before. You still wanted to kind of do like a Humanity crossover, but like unfortunately, like it didn't really come to be. How would you feel about a Thundercats crossover since we just got the network?
Yeah, that's great. There's been so many wonderful crossovers with the Turtles and between Ghostbusters, and we've done now, I think, 3 Turtles Rangers crossovers, which are all kick. So I love them. And even there's it's funny, the Batman Turtle crossover came from. I was a huge fan of actually the first live action movie I ever went to. My sister took me to see Planet of the Apes, and I fell in love with it, and just blew my mind. And Jack Kirby, who was at DC, created a series called Commandy, The Last Boy on Earth, and was set in a Planet of the Apes universe, but it's not only had apes, but all kinds of animals that had taken over and were ruling the Earth. And humans have been reduced to the lowest animal form of life, so to speak. And so I kept pitching IDW. I said, I want to do a Turtles Commandy crossover because it's a source of mutant animals. That was a big inspiration, I think, that helped evolve their turtles. And if you think about it, the turtles going to a world where animals rule would be kind of a place they might find interesting, as opposed to have to hiding in whatever New York City.
Yeah.
So they finally had put together a nice pitched it to DC, and Jim Lee was like, nobody knows who Commandy is. Why don't you do Turtles Batman? And you're like, didn't know that was on the table. And so, and they brought in the incredible James Tinian, who wrote not only the great series, the first 6 issues. Freddie Williams was the main series artist, but then you guys fell in love with him. So we did 2 other series. And so that led to some other, more recent crossovers. But back to that, it's Freddie Williams' dream is a Turtles. It's like he wants to do Turtles. He's been working on the Turtles Eastman crossover. He's huge, I guess. So we're hoping to see that evolve.
Do you think that there will be more crossovers with the Mirage Turtles? Because I know that they recently did Stranger Things with Mirage Turtles.
That was so cool. It was, it's one of those when they originally pitched it like a Turtle Stranger Things. I was like, I loved the Stranger Things series, and I was like, well, they said, well, it was set in '84, mid '80s, and I said, man, that's gonna be. It just felt like a bit of a stretch to make it work, but man, they brought in a great writer, and Farrow is the artist on that series, and it really came together wonderfully. So, it's just great that we have that possibility with the Turtles. Might not one crossover dream, Turtles Daredevil. And that's that would be that's bucket list kind of stuff.
Same origin, right?
Yeah, same.
It's all
Yeah, exactly. I met Stanley once many years ago. Rest of his soul, R.I.P. And so they were trying to find an agent that was trying to find something for Stan and I to work on together, so he could be cool again. And I'm like, he's a legend. He's covered. But the first meetings I was talking about, so we know the Turtles Daredevil wash, the origin is pretty similar. And he goes, I almost sued you over that. He could have. It was pretty blatant.
Yeah.
But that would be, and there's been conversation. So you never know. It's I'm a huge fan of the Daredevil TV series, just kicking butt, and so the new series, Born Again. Very. Matthew Cox is he's killing it. Daredevil.
Yeah.
And
He's great. He was supposed to be here this week, and canceled on us. But he found out you were going to be here. Over there.
In the Batman and TMNT animated movie and comic book, what was your favorite design of the Batman villains when they got turned into the mutants? What was your favorite Batman villain design?
Well, that was, you kind of like the third Batman crossover series?
Talking about like the animated movie.
Well, the animated one was great.
Joker turns into a snake. Mr. Freeze, polar bear. Which one was your favorite?
That was exciting. I love that series. But they made an animated movie based on that crossover. I loved especially I like the toy with Mikey with the Batman cape on and stuff. But it was funny actually. I got to do. I always love when they invite me to do little cameos in the different movies. And there's my favorite one is this leads to an answer to the question. I have very long answers. My wife says I talk too much, and I do. But the first Turtle movie, I had a cameo in that movie. I don't know if you can do that. They actually just came out with a toy of it.
Yes, they did.
So, I look like a member of Paul Hells or something. It's really funny. That's the way I look. So Steve Barron, the director, he and I were on set, and I was like, I want you guys to do a cameo. And he's like, no, I'm not doing it. I said, I'll do it. So I was a garbage man, and the scene was like, it was a setup at the trash truck that comes down and ends up squishing the shredder. And so there's like two turtles fighting, and the camera's here, and the two turtles fighting, and they're changing dialogue, and then Leonardo's behind like kicking butt on like 7-foot guys. And kind of down the street, there's this guy that walks out carrying 2 garbage bags, and behind him comes the trash truck. And he looks down the alley, down at what's happening down the street, drops the bags, and runs back. Not this baby. And so I tell everybody I'm in the movie. And so when the movie comes out, you see this black shadow. This could have been anybody. But somebody had taken Pete actually took a video of me doing the scene, and we made a character of that. I love doing Ice Cream Kitty in the 2012 series. That was my favorite. I wanted to be like George Clooney when he did the dog in South Park. So I was Ice Cream Kitty in the 2012 series. And then in the most recent View Bangham, they had me my official character name was Good Human. I helped Splinter at the end scene. He's,
Okay.
down and I helped get their thing. And anyway, but, I just love doing that stuff. And so for the animated Batman movie, they had this chalkboard, this thing where Mikey was showing how cool Batman is. Well, he's got a car and it's this, and he's got that, and he lives in a cave and all this stuff. So I did all those drawings on that scene. So I love being part of all that stuff. But I love the team that put that together. I think it was a neat seeing Shredder and Batman fighting. So the whole thing it's hard to pick a favorite moment or favorite characters. I really enjoyed them all.
I didn't get Joker being snakes and all things, but
Yeah.
But Joker's obviously a Slytherin.
Yeah.
Like, right? So we know that.
Well, it's weird in the third Batman series, the comic book series, they did this weird thing where they had one of those dimensional things where the Turtles universe and the Batman universe got mixed up. So when you first see him as Batman, grew up with the Turtles, a Splinter trained them all, and each of the Turtles is dressed as one of the different Robin characters. So like Joker and Shredder were mixed up. So there's a Shredder, Joker dressed like, it was just fantastic. James killed it.
Yeah, that was like the crisis, right?
The Crisis, yeah.
Different stuff going on.
A giant crane, and yeah, it was good.
Oh, yeah, that's good stuff.
I love comic book science.
Back there?
I was an odd child. I like the humans better than the turtles. So I loved April O'Neil, Irma, and Vernon the best. Those 3 characters. For Irma and Vernon, how did you come up with those characters? I love the episode where Irma's the giant, and Vernon was always kind of squirmy, and I love that about them. Was it just people you met in your lifetime you thought this would be great for characters? I love them.
No, I like that. That was, to me, is like, it was important for Pete and I, because, the Turtles issue 1 was set to be a one-shot. We never thought we'd sell enough of those to ever do a second issue. When you all supported it, we got a chance to do a second issue. We went from as far away from them as we could as a was a parody, if you will, which so many elements of parody in the first one, to telling new and original stories, and that was where we introduced April. We wanted to have some connection to the real world, if you will, and have a human friend. So that was kind of their sister that they didn't have. So it was great. So we fell in love with April right away and wanted her to be a part of the Turtle universe. But then not long after issue 2, we did issue 3, and then we did the Raphael one-shot, which we introduced Casey Jones. And Casey Jones was an idea I had where, because Raphael was always management, this and that, and originally thought Casey Jones was like, I wanted to be crazier than Raphael, so it might make Raphael look inward a little bit. Like, this is, people think I'm crazy, you should see this guy. But they ended up being best friends, and I love adding different human characters because there's really, it's a connection to other parts of the world that gives you a stronger foundation to tell more stories. And so when we did the animated series, that was important to us to have Noah April as one of the, that's where we changed it from a scientist in the comic series to a reporter, because then it was more direct involvement. She could be a bigger part of all of their adventures. And then, her support team, it was just fun to come up with characters that were based on a number of, stereotypical TV or movie characters, and no one in particular, but they were just great support because you could really play with them and have fun, and they give you a place to go tell different stories and just have fun with it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I kind of grew up with the 80s cartoon, like just old enough to remember it, but my siblings and I really enjoyed the 2000s cartoon, and I've heard that that's kind of closer to the original comic. So can you tell us a little about that original vision?
Yeah, no, very, it's a great question, and those of you didn't hear is like we loved the original cartoon series that started in 88, 87 actually, Christmas of 87, and we ended up doing almost 300 episodes of that. And it was one of those things that throughout that process and those many years of doing it, Pete and I were heavily involved in it. We'd always try to push for, hey, can we bring it back more towards the original comic? Let's bring elements of that in. Maybe it's a little edgier, maybe, because it didn't have to always be, jelly bean and anchovy pizzas and, Bebop and Rocksteady, Shredder's like, oh, we're gonna go over the world, and like, go Turtles. It just started to get repetitious to us. And so we kept trying to push them to do more interesting stories. And it was an ongoing battle and discussion. So with that series sort of played out, it was a long run. I think we finally, 88 series was the first 13 episodes, ran all the way through 1997. And so then after a bit of resting period, and as things evolved with the 2000 series, audience is in general matured. I think comic books had grown up, they were more intense, video games were more intense. It was an opportunity to do something that was edgier, closer to the original comic books, because the audience, even the younger audience, was more exposed to elements that push the boundaries a little bit. And so that was a great opportunity to do darker stories. In a lot of 2000 series, got specifically deeper into the original comic books as part of the storyline. That was the fun part of that series. We could really go there. Time was right to do that. So we had a really good time on that.
Back there. Yeah, you.
So Turtles is always like, it feels like it does something different every single time. There's something that's grounded in reality, like on the streets of New York. There's the more cosmic, where they'll go into space. There's the wacky monster of the week, where they fight a new mutant every week. Or they'll even do magic sometimes. Which of those wildly different styles is the one that you prefer the most?
Great question. And it's one of those things that I remember when, it's become kind of a common term of, in more mainstream term is, thanks to like the Marvel universes and some of those things, is multi-dimensional universes, so that you can have all these different time periods where stuff's going on. And that was nothing new. It's nothing that we did that was new about it. At one time I remember there was 5 different Spider-Man comics going on at the same time. Peter Parker Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man. And with the Turtles, we were lucky because when we had the original comic book series and when we worked on the animated series, we said, well, Pete and I specifically made changes to color bandanas, changing some of the origin, some of the, writing for 5, 6, 7-year-olds of the animated series, but we kept our black and white universe to the side. We kept telling those kind of edgy stories that we had. And then we had this evolution to the first Turtle movie, which was kind of in the middle of the cartoon series and the black and white comic books. And so I feel like suddenly here we were, we've got 3 different universes of Turtles, and that kept evolving. The Next Mutation series that we talked about, the 2007 movie, 2012. So when actually at the same time they were developing the 2012 series, was the same time Tom and I were developing the IDW comic series. And what we thought is interesting, I was working with Ciro and these guys, and one thing is like both Ciro and Tom and I said, let's pick our favorite parts of all these different universes and put them into a universe that creates a neutral universe with respect to all those other universes, but they could choose different characters to bring in at different times. So I feel like the IDW series, to me, I call it a more definitive series because it does take bits of my favorite parts of the Archie series, Tom's favorite parts of the 2000 series, some of the parts of the movie series. We brought characters in that we either changed them a little bit, or a lot, but not even that would offend us or the fans, that we didn't want to take a character, beloved character, and change him so much that it was unrecognizable. And that was the same approach that they were taking with the Nickelodeon series, the 2012 series, which I love very much. And so I feel like those 2 series, to me, are the most interesting because I love them all, but I love those 2 series because we get to pick and choose our personal favorites of all the others within Junior. So I guess that's, if I had to pick 2 that I like, I'd say those 2. But, to me, when you look at the first Turtle movie, it has not been and there will never be another perfect Turtle universe as that first Turtle movie. And I wish we could have stayed in that first movie universe for many movies to come. Yeah, that's my favorite one.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have. It is. That was a breeze. But thank you so much, everybody. Give them a round of
Yeah, we didn't get the question, basically, going back to the table, signing from basically 3 o'clock to close, and after, if you have anything you missed, you have any questions you want to ask, don't be shy, step up and ask away. But I want to say most of all that I get to be up here and I get to have the greatest job of living in childhood dreaming of wanting to be a comic storyteller, thanks to you guys. And I mean it very sincerely. It's not any kind of weird answer or anything. It's like, I couldn't be here if you weren't there. And I love my job. I love that you guys have so much love of the Turtles. It's been 41 years, and I have the greatest job because I have the greatest fans. And I sincerely thank you. And it's great to come to these shows and hang out with you. I really sincerely enjoy it. So great to spend the weekend with you. And see you next time. We'll see you back at the table shortly. If anybody's coming by. Thank you.
That's what I go. I'm leaving the panel. This is an active hallway. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
My apologies, but I made sure that everybody knows. You going to see the Walking Dead?
What?
You going to see the Walking Dead?
Yeah. Okay, cool. Very little.
You're calling me. I don't know.
I saw you had to clear the creature.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why it's.
I like to read, right?
Yeah.
I was.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We also do have those doors as well.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah, that's it. I've read parts of it and I've got to.
Thank you for accepting. If you are currently a general admittance
Bye.